Welcome to the FanDuel wide receiver analysis for Week 17. I'm Jason Gilbo at JGilbo11. With me is Justin Elick at Big Elite 42. And taking a look at wideouts, I almost forgot your name. I was going to say Russell Clay, but
I don't blame you. I'm not very memorable.
No, we used to do pods all the time, but now it's just a day thing.
Now Week 17 by now. I just can't wait for all these crappy teams to be gone, and so we can talk about.
No, they're still going to be there. AFC playoffs are still going to be there.
Yeah, that's true. We're gonna have to do NFC only pods, so we don't have to talk about crap.
Well, looking at cash game wideouts this week, and I don't think there's any way around just not playing Jordy Nelson.
No, and you know what's funny, right? Is we're bashing the AFC. 5 of the 6 wide receivers in here are NFC receivers. So
it's true.
Yeah, that tells you the state. But yeah, it's just like last week we talked about Jordy Nelson. It was an obvious play despite a tough matchup. And obviously we didn't think that he would necessarily go for 154 yards and 2 touchdowns. That was just an added bonus. But now it's literally the perfect scenario for him. Roger said they needed to win out, and they were going to win out. Now they get to the last game, potentially. They could win out. They're favored to win on the road at the Lions. They got a big team total. Nelson has been just unbelievable. I think he leads the league in yardage over the last, 10 weeks, something like that. Getting a ton of looks, leads the league in red zone targets. It's the same stuff every week, and it's just an obvious play for him this week against the Lions in a must-win game. And, Lions could go 2 seed all the way down to out of the playoffs here. Packers, I think the highest they can go is 3 seed. Is that what we said earlier?
Yeah, I believe so.
No, we were looking at it. So, yeah, Green Bay can go up to 3 seed. But either way, it's a win. It's a must-win situation for them. And, the Lions, their passer rating they're allowing, worse in the NFL. So they've got their strengths, but defending quarterbacks is not one of them.
Yeah, it definitely isn't. Jordy Nelson's by far the top option this week. Cash and GPP. Next one here, Doug Baldwin, 7,100. Doesn't kind of, get that price like he deserves, I guess you could say. Always kind of seems to be in this cheaper range. Great matchup here against this 49ers team that's just, one, they're banged up secondary. They haven't been good anyway, regardless of who's out there.
Yeah, and it's another spot where you've got a team like Seattle that still battling for playoff positioning. It's likely that they'll end up as a 3 seed, potentially the 4 seed. But, if New Orleans somehow knocks off Atlanta, don't hold your breath on that one. But they could still get a bye in the first week. Tyler Lockett, everybody broke their fibula last week. Did everyone break their leg? Every injury was a broken leg. Lockett was one of them. And then I saw a stat that after Lockett was injured, Wilson attempted 32 passes and 14 of them were targets for Doug Baldwin, who had 19 on the game. So I don't expect this game to be competitive nearly as long as that one was. Big team total, though. 49ers, one of the worst, if not the worst, pass and run defense in the league. Baldwin's going to be the focal point because Thomas Rawls hasn't been particularly good in the backfield, even with a great matchup. So I think if the Niners can keep this one close even for a half, you could see Baldwin with 10 targets here.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is, the running game hasn't been impressive, and usually we like to target San Francisco with running backs. But I think this week I like Baldwin. I like Russell Wilson. I think I'm curious to see their ownership because I don't think it's going to be rather high even coming off of big weeks. I just think Falcons, Saints, Packers, Lions is going to be really the 4 teams that a lot of people kind of drift towards.
Yeah, and people look at the point spread and say, I don't want part of the passing game. But like you said, the running game hasn't been good. They got to score points somehow. And Russell Wilson, he always has those random terrible games in there. And this game is on the road, but I'm not buying into the home road splits as significant as they are. 14-point difference for them. They're not going to score 14 points in this game against the 49ers. That's not going to happen.
No, they have 17 maybe.
I'll be shocked, honestly, sincerely shocked if they don't score 17 points in the first quarter. They're going to destroy this team, and Baldwin could have a monster game and should.
Yeah, he definitely could. GPP wideouts, Michael Thomas, 6,700, taking on this Falcons team. I like Drew Brees in this offense this week. You just got to hope we don't get those touchdowns to John Kuhn and Cadet and
Kobe Fleener. All these bad players.
Is he even in the NFL anymore?
Didn't he score a touchdown last week? He scored a touchdown. No.
Was that
2 weeks ago?
He did. I've been on the Fleener train this whole year because it's season long, so I know.
Well, that thing hasn't crashed yet? You haven't crashed and burned? Okay, Fleener scored a touchdown at some point recently. When was that? Oh, yeah, that was
Week 8.
Yeah, Carolina. Yeah, that was a while ago. But maybe it was Josh Hill that scored a touchdown. Either way, some bad tight end scored a touchdown for them. But
John Phillips.
Michael Thomas, though, he's actually, if you look at red zone numbers, he's actually been one of the more efficient running back or wide receivers as far as red zone looks. I mean, he's got 10 looks inside the 10. He's caught 7 of them, 6 of them for touchdowns. And I mean, that percentage, that type of efficiency is one of the highest in all of football right there. I mean, you look at the guys ahead of him. Sanders, 3 touchdowns on 6 catches and 11. Fitzgerald, 3 out of 11 targets. Jordy Nelson, of course, 9 out of 11 catches, but he's just a god, as we know. So really, as far as all receivers in the NFL, he might be the most efficient in terms of turning his actual targets inside of the 10-yard line in touchdowns, aside from Jordy Nelson. So, he's a big target. Obviously, Brandon Cooks is not that big target inside the red zone. So I'm expecting they're going to score some points, and I think he's going to get plenty of looks in the red zone again.
Yeah, definitely. I like him quite a bit this week. Mike Evans, and here we just go. Talk about him.
One last time, right? Because they're not going to make the playoffs, so we won't be able to talk about him next week. I'm just hoping for a tie in that Giants-Redskins game so I can have one more week of Mike Evans next week. But
let's be real. You're not going to fit him in somewhere in some sneaky comment anyway.
Look, I'm still guaranteed. See, that's the challenge. I'll find a way to talk about Mike Evans again next week. But, I mean, he's no longer number 1 in the league in targets, so that's upsetting to me. Odell Beckham has 2 more than him. I don't imagine Beckham's going to play much, if at all, this week. So you got to imagine Evans will take that back. Cameron Brate, a guy who's been stealing his touchdowns recently. Now he's on the IR, so that's a guy out. Doug Martin, as we talked about before, he's not playing now this week. He's serving a suspension. So there's 2 weapons. I say weapon very lightly with Doug Martin. He's been horrible this season, but that's a guy who at least was getting touches. So, in a game that kind of has no meaning because they're not going to make the playoffs, they still have that, one in a million type of shot, which it literally is that. So, they're going to come out trying to take advantage. And, Carolina's allowing the most yardage per game to opposing passing offenses. So, Mike Evans could be in for a huge game as he finishes up an impressive campaign.
Yeah, and Carolina, I mean, they've been a team that we target number wide receiver once against this season.
And he's the ultimate wide receiver 1. Yeah,
I mean, at this point in the season, I can't think of a more mismatched wide receiver with corners than Mike Evans.
Yeah. Oh, and I mean, Antonio Brown's not going to play. Beckham's probably not going to play. Jones is banged up. There's really limited options. It's Jordy Nelson's number 1, not even close. And then I think if you're going to pay up, I think Mike Evans is your second option.
In this week, I mean, we haven't even gotten to a value guy yet, but, we already talked about D'Angelo Williams, 4,500. Russell Wilson's only 7,800. Blake Bortles, 7,800. I mean, there's room to just jam 3 price wide receivers into your lineup.
Yeah, you can get anyone you want this week with these value plays. It's not hard.
Yeah, and looking at the next value play here, I mean, 5,700, Golden Tate, a good correlation play this week because you look at these 2 secondaries, they're just not that good. So I think in terms of getting both sides of it, Golden Tate's an excellent kind of wide receiver 3 this week.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen him be somewhat inconsistent at times, more so because the Lions have been inconsistent at times, but he's still getting a good amount of targets. Only saw 6 last week, but caught all of them. The 3 weeks prior to that, 10, 11, and 13 targets, 2 of those games over 100 yards. Obviously more of a GPP play, as you can see. I mean, if you have ever looked at his game logs, he's had a lot of ups and downs, obviously. But, I mean, there hasn't been a bigger game in Detroit in years since the last time they played a playoff game. I mean, this is a playoff game. Like we said, potential for them to go all the way up to the 2 seed or miss the playoffs completely. I mean, that would be a hell of a collapse for them to go lose their last 3 games and miss the playoffs. But, I mean, that's a realistic possibility if they lose this game because they need the Redskins to lose. Redskins are playing a Giants team that's probably going to bench all their starters. So, in all reality, I mean, it's a very real possibility that they lose this game and they're out. So, Golden Tate been the number 1 for much of the season for them. I just expect him to see just a ton of targets here.
Yeah, I do too. And, at the price tag, as you point out, I mean, he has those games where he goes to 7, 8 FanDuel points, and it's not particularly pretty. It doesn't necessarily kill you at that price tag. I don't think it'll kill you this week, especially when, you're looking at him as being your 3rd option probably behind guys like Evans, Nelson, Baldwin.
Yeah, I mean, would not at all be shocked to see him 12, 13, 14 targets in this one because let's be honest here. There's not a chance that the Lions shut down Aaron Rodgers this week. They're going to have to score points.
Yeah, definitely. Next one here, another cheap Steelers guy, 4,700 Eli Rogers. So you're looking here basically at, Brown obviously being out this week, kind of another fill-in option.
Yeah, and Rodgers has actually been good the last couple weeks with Brown playing. Brown really didn't do a whole lot the last couple weeks himself, but Eli Rogers has 159 yards and a touchdown over the last 2 weeks. Now he's going to be kind of, I guess, the default number one option with Brown out and Bell out, and we all know there's no team in the league with two players that account for more of their offense than Bell and Brown. So once those two guys are out, Roethlisberger's out. I mean, there's a ton. Vegas still has all these backups projected to score almost 25 points against the Browns. So that's telling you right there, they're going to obviously take a little step back, but for them to have one of the higher totals on the week with everyone resting, that says a lot about, the fact that their backups are efficient and that the Browns defense is just, it's just pathetic.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Sneaky play. I mean, if you need to kind of drop down that extra 1,000, or if you're paying up at, say you're fading D'Angelo Williams and you're paying up at both backs. Kind of good way to get that exposure still at a cheap price.
Yep.
So that's going to wrap things up with the FanDuel wide receiver analysis for week 17. If you want to check out Justin's article, you can head on over to fantasycafe.com and be sure to check out the rest of our tools and content.